So, hi Serena, thank you for talking to me today.
Hello.
We've got a lot of changes happening very quickly, so I thought it would be good to note that it is 3:30 on Thursday the 26th of March when we're having our conversation. So Serena has kindly agreed to talk to us about all things regarding employment law. And we asked our members to submit some questions, so I'm just going to go ahead and ask Serena the questions that were submitted to us from our members. So the first thing that our members wanted to know was, how can an employer temporarily change contractual hours for employees?
Yeah, everything that I say is obviously just caveated by this is not specific legal advice. It's just a general discussion. If you want specific legal advice, you should speak to your own solicitor, obviously. Also, the other thing to say is that a lot of these things are changing really quickly. There's a lot of new things coming out, a lot of legislation that's changing, so it's worth just double checking it. Like you say, we're speaking now and it could be all totally different.
Yeah.
This time last week we're all still in our offices, so
I know, exactly.
Who knows? So at the moment the rules are still that any change to contractual hours is still a change to people's terms and conditions of working, so you need to try and consult with them as much as possible. That might be quite difficult at the moment, given where people are and what's happening, but you really just need to try. The first thing to do is dig out everybody's terms and conditions of employment so that you have those to hand, because different people will have different legal entitlements depending on how long they've worked. And the key is to make sure that anything you do is as fair as possible, so to avoid any discrimination allegations.
Okay. Perfect, thank you. I'm sure that answers a few questions for people. The next thing that we got asked was an explanation of some different approaches to laying off staff. For example, unpaid leave versus redundancy versus furlough. So just the different options that are available to employers.
Yes, so obviously employers have various options. They can, we've talked about, they are reducing hours, which is a possibility. There's also unpaid leave, which is basically where you ask someone to agree to take a period where they won't get paid. Technically speaking, again, you can only do this if that is in your terms and conditions of employment, that layoff is allowed, and it's quite unusual. So again, it's worth checking your terms and conditions of employment. If you have a layoff clause, that's easier. If you don't have a layoff clause, then you're looking at a bit of a consultation to really say to people, will you take a period of unpaid leave, or we'll be looking at making you redundant, basically. Another important point is it depends how many. If you have more than 20 employees, you may be looking at a collective negotiating position. So there's a bit more rules if you're a bigger company. So I'm just assuming that most folk watching this will be under 20 employees. Redundancy is where you're basically saying to someone, your role is permanently gone. In that circumstances, you have to consult with the employee as best you can again, and there's sort of a lot of places you can go, and we'll come on to that, but where you can get sort of standard letters and styles to help you go through that process. Again, if an employee has been with you more than 2 years, so it's also helpful to look at what start dates people have. If they've been employed with you less than 2 years, then they don't have the same employment rights, and it is sometimes easier to take these steps with people who've been with you less than 2 years. Furlough is a new concept that the government came up with this time last week, I think. So that's interesting. The full guidance about that hasn't actually come out yet, so we're still a little bit in the dark, but we are expecting that any day. But essentially what the government are saying is that if you have an employee who would otherwise be made redundant, instead of making them redundant, you can furlough them. And if you do that, the government will repay you 80% of their salary for the period that they're in furlough as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. And the government is setting up a way for you to let them know who has been furloughed.
Okay.
And there are some rules about that, some of which are not clear at the moment, but at the moment it is quite clear that those people can't get jobs for other people and they can't continue to work for you.
Okay.
So if you're thinking, I've got work this person could do if I didn't have to pay them to do it, unfortunately, if they're furloughed, that means that they're not working.
They're not able to do any work. Okay.
Yeah. Another point is about sick leave, which has also changed. So people can get sick leave pretty much statutory sick pay straight away, whereas you used to have to wait 3 days. You can also now get sick pay if you're self-isolating or you're looking after someone who should be self-isolating. So another thing to consider is whether your staff members are entitled to sick pay. But actually statutory sick pay is not a huge amount of money.
Mm-hmm.
And again, you'd have to check your terms and conditions. If you are obligated to pay people contractual sick pay, then that's a different thing.
Okay.
You just need to check your terms and conditions.
Yeah. Great, so lots of information there. I think they've answered all of the questions within that. The next kind of most common question we ask is just where should employers go for up-to-date information on employment law? So obviously there's so many different things circulating in so many different places that we should be checking. Is there somewhere that should be the go-to starting point for all employers?
Yes, I would say ACAS website. They are a really good resource for employers at any time. And I think the BID have linked to a few things that they've put up already. They've got lots of stuff for normal circumstances, and they're keeping up as best they can with these unusual circumstances. So I would say the ACAS website. A lot of solicitors firms, employment law solicitors particularly, are putting out regular bulletins which you can sign up for, and those are all very good. Some people will have things like Mentor or Peninsula, which are employment law advice services. Obviously, if you're signed up to one of those, check up with them. If you have insurance and you've not already, then check your insurance to see if you've got any cover for legal costs or any other type of employment. A lot of people don't know exactly what their insurance covers, so it's worth taking that out and having a look at that as well.
Okay, just have a proper read over.
Yeah, exactly.
So
and if you don't have ACAS, and if you don't have terms and conditions of employment, then you would really be looking at getting those in place as quickly as possible, and that's just good advice. I would have told you that 2 weeks ago. It's just always really good advice.
Okay, perfect, thank you. The next question is on a slightly different topic, which was sent in by a member, and that was about how to go about asking for rent holidays from landlords. Yes,
so that would really very much depend on your tenancy agreement, which hopefully you will have. If not, again, that's something to get in place as quickly as possible. There's nothing come out as far as I'm aware for commercial landlords, and there's some guidance for residential landlords and saying about being as kind as you can to your tenants and so on. But there's nothing that I'm aware of for commercial landlords. I would just say speak to your landlord as soon as you can, as early as you can, and just be open and honest with them. In terms of most tenancy agreements, the landlord will have a period where they can't do very much, but it might be quite a short period before they're able to serve notices on you. So just the sooner you speak to them, the better. In this market, hopefully people will be pretty sympathetic, and obviously take advantage of the business government loans that are coming out if you can. And take advice from your accountants or anyone else you can about your cash flow, and just speak to people as early as you can, and that applies to general other creditors as well. So just keep talking to people.
Communication.
Exactly.
Perfect. Well, those were the questions that we had submitted for members. So is there any other sort of last advice you'd like to give?
No, I think it's just a really challenging time for us all. If there's anything that we can do for anyone, just give us a shout. And we're all pretty much in the same boat. So
absolutely.
Hopefully we're going to be able to get through it as best we can.
Fingers crossed. I know it is difficult for everyone. Well, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it. Hopefully this will be a big help to our members, and just nice to see it from a friendly local face as well. It's helpful. So thank you very much for your time.
No problem.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks very much. Bye.
Bye.